Hello, everyone in podcast land. Welcome to this week's episode. Today, we give you an update to the whole Twitter fiasco. We talk about Qualcomm's new chip, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. We give you a rundown on the whole FTX situation.
And we talk about the potential Google Pixel Fold that might have just gotten leaked.
All right. Topic number one, update to Twitter. So, Elon fires more people. Check marks are a mess right now, and everyone says Twitter is dead. Well, I mean, it's technically not dead yet, but it's dying, according to people on Twitter, people who work for Twitter, people who used to work for Twitter. So, yeah, last podcast kind of talked about the check mark situation, how Elon was rolling out a new way to get verified. I mean, not really verified, but a new way to get a blue check mark. So you pay $8, you're a blue check mark person. And I said that I thought it was going to be a problem. I thought it was going to make the bot problem worse, which was something that Elon said he was looking to fix. And, I'm not going to say I'm a prophet or anything, but I was right. There was quite a few fake accounts that pop up. And I say fake because they were impersonating celebrities, athletes, they were impersonating companies. Say a couple of notable ones. There was a fake LeBron James that was created, and this fake LeBron James account announced that he wanted a trade from LA. He said, "Thank you for my time. I'm immediately asking for a trade from LA." And I think it even made like Sports Center and ESPN. It was making headlines until it was revealed that, oh no, this is just a fake LeBron James account that looks real because someone paid $8 to get a blue check mark next to their name. There's also a fake company that put out a tweet saying that they were going to give away insulin for free. It's a drug company that makes money selling, pharmaceuticals. And they said they were going to give out insulin for free instantly. And within 24 hours, their stock price dropped 4.37%, and they lost billions of dollars in stock value. This was all thanks to the whole situation where Elon thought it would be a good idea to allow people to buy check marks. I think since the last podcast we did, there was also talks of, okay, there's a regular blue check mark, which just means that someone paid $8, but they're going to introduce another check mark, a gray check mark, which means this is an official person, someone who has been verified, is either a celebrity or, a reliable news source. And I think that maybe lasted like 2 hours. And then they decided to get rid of the gray check mark too. So now it's just back to blue check marks. But it still is, quite the fiasco. Now, he's since fired a lot more people. He's fired people for openly criticizing him. And now that's either openly at the company or on company Slack channels, or even just, getting into Twitter arguments with employees just out in the open and then firing them via tweet. And last week, so we're recording this on Sunday, on Wednesday, I want to say, he put out an ultimatum to the employees that were left behind, and the 2,900 employees that were left behind, because he fired 50% of the staff. And that he said that the remaining employees had to commit to a new hardcore Twitter by the end of Friday. And if they didn't commit to this new hardcore Twitter, then they were essentially fired or they were resigning. And when it came up to the deadline last Friday, hundreds of people left because they didn't want to sign up for the hardcore Twitter. He didn't explain what this even meant. So hundreds of people left from the 2,900 people that were still around. And he posted a picture, with a few engineers. It looks like, maybe 30 or 40 engineers that he still had left. And he said, the best people stuck around. So I'm not too worried about the future of Twitter. But a lot of news, a lot of drama surrounding Elon. And, I think I made the mistake of saying before, like, yeah, the whole situation with Elon and Twitter is done. It's been resolved. He's going to buy the company. It's just beginning. So I guess, what are your thoughts on this past week and a bit of Twitter news of the ultimatums and the fire-ins and the mass layoffs? What are your thoughts on, I guess, how Elon's first month of Twitter ownership is going?
I honestly don't have a ton of thoughts. I mean, it's one of those things where, like you, I was kind of in the camp of, okay, the purchase is done, that whole circus is over, we can finally stop talking about this. And unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. Uh, but there's a couple of things that I've noticed with, and I don't know if this is something that I've just noticed because I don't use Twitter a ton, or if this is something that's actually changed under Musk. But one thing I've noticed is that going on to the Twitter website now doesn't force you to log in right away. For a while, I noticed like the moment you type in twitter.com, it
Mhm.
automatically asks you for your username and password before you can do anything. Now, and I don't know if this has always been the case, and just sometimes it shows you the login, sometimes it doesn't. I know there's
Nope, it's new.
oh, it's
It's
new.
something that Elon changed. Yeah.
Interesting, because I like that. I like the fact that the moment I go to the front page, I can just kind of see what's going on. And I do remember there being some kind of conversation about Twitter being used now more um, than it has been in the past, and there's more users on it. And I could imagine this is something that we even talked about on the podcast. The first time I ever tried TikTok, I never have had a TikTok account, and I never will. But I was able to try it because at the time, and they've kind of cut down on this a little bit recently, but at the time, you could just go on the website and use it without an account and see what was going on. And then I was like, oh, okay, I could try it out for the podcast, see what it's like, what the whole craze is about. And yeah, it gave you the opportunity to kind of find out what the platform is, use it, get your hands on with it. And Twitter's, I think this is a smart move. But I think overall the positives of this kind of ends there, simply because another thing that we talked about on the podcast, when the purchase was first being talked about, and some employees, voiced their opinion about how this might not be great for them. They might not want to see Twitter change to the tune of what Musk had pitched he wanted it to change to. Made me think of like, well, I hope he takes their criticism at heart because he's going to be the CEO, he's going to be their boss essentially, and not just disregard them as just simple employees or assets that can be thrown away or ignored. And unfortunately, it seems like that's exactly the way he's treating the talent at Twitter, and I don't think that's acceptable in any way. I don't think, even if you are an Elon Musk fan, I don't know how you can stand behind essentially the richest person in the world at the time buying a company and then just treating his employees like they were nothing. And
Mhm.
there could have been there's been a lot of criticism about how Twitter handled its finances in the past. But if you looked at things like where you could rate your place of work, Twitter was generally rated pretty high. And maybe that wasn't sustainable. It probably most certainly wasn't. But I don't think this complete 180 from having employees treated well according to their own account, to just being unceremoniously fired, in some cases maybe even illegally let go, and threatening employees that they have to be extremely hardcore and work long hours. Like, that's just not healthy, first of all. And second of all, it's not what you want to hear from your CEO. You don't want your CEO to be saying, hey, you're going to need to be hardcore and work ridiculously long hours
Yeah.
because that's what I want you to do. Yeah, it's just at the same time getting rid of more than half of your staff, so that the people who are left there have to crunch even more. Yeah, I just can't see much positive in what's been going on, and I hope this kind of turns around, because at the end of the day, I do not think Twitter is going to go anywhere. It's a platform that people really like, even though it's not the biggest social media platform. It is one that people really enjoy using, at least from what I've heard. I don't particularly use it much, or at all, but I've heard people really enjoy it and they want it to stick around, and I think it will. It's just, hopefully, as it sticks around, it's because of good leadership and actually treating employees who are human beings like human beings and not like assets.
Mhm.
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if that's on Elon's list of changes for the future.
Yeah. Well, I guess bit more on people who have left the company. Now, according to, and these are tweets from people who said that they were working at the company, or who it's been known that they were a part of Twitter and who are no longer with them. There are critical teams that have either completely resigned, or a large majority of their, the critical staff have resigned. So you look at stuff like traffic and front ends teams, people who maintain core system libraries that engineers use, several members of the command center engineer teams, teams that manage API for developers, HR and payroll is basically gone from the
Mhm.
company. Teams tasked with rolling out Twitter Blue, the entire team responsible for Twitter Blue is gone, and the lead web engineer is gone also. So I think people at the moment enjoy Twitter, and if people enjoy using it, then yes, it's gonna stick around, because if people like using the platform and they're still on the platform, then yeah, it's gonna stick around because it is the best at what it does. But if you look at all these critical staff, and I mean, when you let go of 50% of your staff, it's hard not to lose some critical members.
Yeah.
It's I it's running okay right now, but when something goes wrong and you're lacking your traffic and front end team, or if something goes wrong with the APIs that developers use and you're lacking a team that's responsible for that, and either the entire team is gone, or it's a very limited team, or maybe there were 10 people and now there's one person trying to do the job of 10 people, you're going to run into problems, right? And so if this app, if this website, if this service starts breaking down, people aren't going to want to stick around and use it, and they're going to find something else that isn't breaking down.
Mhm.
And a tweet thread from a reputed Twitter engineer, Peter Klaus, who actually just left Twitter with this mass exodus of, okay, you have to sign up for a hardcore Twitter, and if you don't sign up, then you're gone. He's one of the people that left. Now, he says he wanted to stick around when Elon took over, and 50% of the staff were let go, and other people, hundreds of other people were quitting. He wanted to stick around because in his mind it was, what else does he have to lose right now? Because he still has a job, he's still working at a company that he enjoys working for. But when Wednesday's ultimatum happened, it kind of offered a clean exit. And he said from the staff that he worked with, 80% of the team was gone.
Mm.
So out of the 75 engineers that were there, 3 of them were left. And in his words, maybe for the right vision, in terms of, the right vision of where the company was going, he would have stayed, and he wouldn't have minded doing, the mind numbing work, the working late hours, the working over the weekends. He wouldn't have minded doing that, but nothing was shared with the company. Nothing was shared with the engineers or the people that worked there. And there was no, 5-year plan. Like, hey, in 5 years, this is what we want Twitter to be. There's nothing more than just tweets that Elon put out for the entire world to see.
Yeah.
So he essentially had no information about what was going to happen with Twitter than we did. So he was, or not just him, but the entire staff of Twitter was asked to just believe off of blind faith and sign away their severance packages before they even knew what they were signing up for.
Mm.
And, all of the people who worked at Twitter were naturally untrusting of Elon Musk, because this is what a 7-month process of him buying 10% and him saying he wants to be on the board of directors, then saying he wants to take over, and then saying if they don't sell him the entire company, he's gonna, sell his stocks, and the price dropped, and like all kinds of, 7 months of drama with Elon Musk. So naturally they wouldn't be trustworthy of him.
Yeah.
Right. And in Peter Klaus's words, he says, I love hard work. I like doing it with people that I like for a mission that I care about. But he wasn't prepared. I'm sure a lot of people felt this way. They weren't prepared to sign up for hard work. We're coming up to the holiday period, right? Who wants to work 12, 14, 16-hour days over the holidays, over the weekends, when you don't know what exactly you're building towards, and you don't have any of this people, you're losing 80% of your coworkers. So I would like for Twitter to stick around. I hope that Elon is successful in whatever his vision is, but I don't think that what he's doing is a recipe for success in terms of, all of the drama over the past 7 months. Like, this all could have been done in April, right? But he kind of dragged it. He said he didn't want to buy it, then he decided he wanted to buy it, and then he eventually got forced into buying the company again. And then to let go of 50% of your staff, like the first thing you do is we're going to get rid of 50% of everyone without even fully understanding like who are we letting go,
Mhm.
or what are we trying to build towards, or like who do we need to get to where we're trying to build towards. It's I hope it's successful. I hope, the platform, the company still sticks around, but I have to say I don't really see it sticking around much longer. Whether or not that's just from people leaving, or if the platform just breaks and he doesn't have enough people around to put it back together.
I I mean, that's 100% possible. I feel like this is a situation that's easily fixable with a situation of, yes, there's always going to be the issue of if too many skilled people leave that know the platform and understand the base, the code base that the platform is built on. I've seen this happen many times where a company starts to have a changeover in its expertise, and then people no longer know how to fix the problems that, were created when that first piece of software was first designed by someone who no longer works at that company. You don't want that to happen at Twitter. You want people who have an understanding of how Twitter operates at its most basic level to still be around, even if you do want to bring in some fresh eyes to the company. But, also on top of that, if this is a situation where, or maybe Musk feels like he can't operate with any kind of consistency, it would be very easy for him to just bring in a COO to handle the day-to-day operations that can do that. And, maybe that's in the cards. There's just so many opportunities for this to turn around. And specifically with the Twitter Blue idea, I honestly don't think it's the worst idea ever. I just think the way that it was implemented was really dumb. So many people want to be verified. And just giving them the option to pay for the check mark, I don't think is enough. I think if you give people the option to pay the money, which I think a lot of people will, but give them the option to have themselves verified by giving, Twitter the proper documents, and make sure that their account has their proper name, and maybe putting in restrictions on them being able to change that name and stuff like that once they're verified. I think all that is a very good way of creating some extra, revenue for the company. I don't think it's enough, but it's a good option. And that's the thing. Like, even with what I mentioned with the front page now of you not having to log in, there's definitely some decent ideas here that can make the platform better. It's the inconsistency that's kind of derailing everything. And these ideas need to be thought out properly first. And you need to have people who actually believe in the company working for you, who are willing to put in the hours, without feeling like everything's gonna collapse. And yeah, once again, I feel like this is 100% fixable. It probably just needs either Elon to get a little bit more level-headed, or for someone who is level-headed to come in and kind of bring some stability to whatever is going on there.
I don't think Elon can be level-headed. I don't think he'll hand over the reins to someone else. I think what he's really planning to do is, as all this is going on and as Twitter is crashing or dying, or as it ceases to exist, I think amid all that, he's going to launch his platform X.
Mm.
He's been talking about building a one platform to do everything, as a social media, it's a banking app, it's a car rental app, it does everything, right? So he has this company, and technically this X company owns Twitter. I think as everyone's leaving Twitter, this mass exodus, as it begins to break in usability, I think he's going to launch his platform, and his justification will be Twitter was too broken to fix.
Mm.
I tried to take it and make it into, the town hall where people could speak freely, and, there weren't people being banned left, right, and center. I tried to make it, but Twitter fundamentally was too broken. And I think he's going to launch his X app. And I think it's going to essentially be what Twitter is, or I think it's exactly going to be what Twitter is now. But I think it will be a cleaner approach.
Mm.
And that way people won't be comparing it. People are still going to compare it. I'm sure we'll compare it to Twitter. But I think if he does it in that way, then it's not like, oh, well, this is Twitter and it's broken compared to what it used to be. But now it's going to be, this is Elon's X app. And, look at all the stuff that it could do. We've been wanting something that does this for so long. And now this is it. That's what I think his big brain plan is.
I mean, potentially, I think that would have been much more successful if the Twitter deal didn't go through, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's what he planned all along. I think we spoke about it on the podcast, where the idea to purchase Twitter seemed more like publicity than it was an actual offer. But then
Yeah,
when it became a legal issue, I think, it became a situation where you had to go through with it.
yeah,
But yeah, this kind of reminds me of the whole Oculus Meta thing, where Oculus was beloved by people who loved VR. Facebook bought it. Now it's rebranded as Meta, and the DNA of Oculus is kind of gone. And even though, like we talked about, how the Meta headsets are really well designed and they got great hardware because they had that expertise, it's not as cool as Oculus originally was. And I could imagine
mhm,
X kind of doing that with Twitter, where people who really love Twitter would see X and be like, yeah, but this isn't what we wanted. This is kind of what the CEO wanted, kind of like how Mark, wanted something with Meta, as opposed to what the people who actually spent all their money on Oculus Rifts and stuff like that back in the day wanted. So yeah, I don't know.
yeah. I guess we'll have to see what Elon ends up doing with it.
Yeah, I just hope the people who are left at Twitter, get a little bit more stability with their work.
Yes, hopefully. And hopefully they get a clear vision of what they are working towards.
Yes.
All right, on to topic number 2. Qualcomm has recently announced their newest chip, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is the successor to the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1. This chip is focused on better and more efficient performance for AI-related tasks, as well as featuring Wi-Fi 7, which is the first time this is featured on a system on a chip. Now, the Gen 2's Cryo CPU includes a prime core based on an ARM Cortex X3, which clocks at 3.2 gigahertz. It features 4 performance cores, which is 1 more than last year, and 3 efficiency cores. Qualcomm says the CPU is 35% faster than last generation and offers 40% power savings. The Adreno GPU core is up to 25% faster with 45% better power efficiency. This isn't officially in any phones yet, but they're saying it's supposed to be in phones before the end of the year. So before 2022, probably within, the next couple of weeks, we'll start seeing some phones featured. Phones from either Asus or Xiaomi or Huawei are gonna feature this Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Now, from all the specs that we've heard and things that we've seen, do you think this is going to be a big bump in performance compared to phones featuring the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1?
No, I don't think so. It's interesting because, like you mentioned, AI is a huge part of the marketing of this chip from Qualcomm. And it seems like they want to make a focus that there's some kind of machine learning ML tech in this chip that is going to be used across the board. So not just for image signal processing ISPs that it's been used for in the past, but there's going to be specific models for voice recognition, ISPs, gaming, AI, and stuff like that in games. So essentially, you could have bots probably processed locally on the device if you're playing a game like, I don't know, there's maybe a Call of Duty mobile mode where it has Call of Duty mobile with bots, so you're not playing online, and have that processed on the phone as opposed to being online, and even into their RF system, so their 5G kind of modem on the device. There's supposed to be some kind of machine learning integration into there as well, and that's like the major copy on the announcement of this device. And on the feature page of this device, it's all about, how there's going to be AI integrated across the board. But then when you look at some of the bullet points about the stats and, the performance, yes, they say it's supposed to be 40% more efficient than last gen. But that's, the 8 Plus Gen 1 was 30% more efficient than the 8 Gen 1. So, and they even label on this this kind of spreadsheet of their features that they're comparing it specifically to the previous generation. And to me, that makes it sound like they're comparing it to the 8 Gen 1 as opposed to the 8 Plus Gen 1. And a lot of the specs comparing this if you're comparing it to the 8 Plus Gen 1, sound very similar, with just slight increases. So about a 10% more efficient processor, which is great. Every little bit of efficiency matters, especially because so many people talked about that the 8 Plus Gen 1 got way better battery life than the original 8 Gen 1. But then also, a CPU that has better performance up to 3.2 gigahertz, which I believe is the same as the 8 Plus Gen 1. Let me just double check. Yeah, it's the same, up to 3.2 gigahertz peak. So that's pretty much the same there. But about a 25%, if you're comparing based on their specs, it seems like about a 25% faster performance overall. So yeah, not a huge difference, and definitely not up to the levels of Apple's devices. I think where things are really going to be a little bit more interesting is in terms of gaming, especially like you mentioned, there's going to be phones with this processor coming down the line. There's also potentially some talk, some leaks about Samsung devices getting a special version of this chip that is clocked a little bit faster, maybe even has better GPU performance than what everyone else is going to have access to. And I think this is really interesting because if you remember, we even talked about it on this podcast, Samsung was potentially going to switch over from Qualcomm to their own Exynos processors. And the GPUs on their own processors was supposed to be RDNA, AMD RDNA kind of architecture, which is similar to what the Steam Deck is using. But there was a lot of rumors that they were having issues with those processors in terms of power consumption and stuff like that. So if this is true, if these rumors are true, this could be a signal that Samsung is abandoning their own processors completely and instead just going to Qualcomm to say, hey, give us the best version of this chip that we can get, better than everyone else. And that way they don't lose out on the biggest Android manufacturer that they have access to. So yeah, this is kind of really interesting news overall. But I don't think for day to day this is really going to compete with iPhones in terms of like the A processors that we've been seeing. Or is it? I don't think a lot of people who have just got a brand new phone with the 8 Plus Gen 1 are going to be, kicking themselves thinking, oh, we should have waited, because it probably isn't going to be too much of a difference. But I don't know. How about you? What do you think about this? Do you think the focus on AI maybe is them downplaying the performance gains a little bit?
I think possibly. Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think it's going to be a huge improvement from last year, right? And it's, as you brought up a good point, it's funny that they compare this to the 8 Gen 1. Then they're not comparing it to the 8 Plus Gen 1, right? Which is kind of the tricky thing with a mid-generation chip update, right? Because I'm sure if they wanted to, they could have held off on the 8 Plus Gen 1 and then just taken all those improvements and just put it in this 8 Gen 2. But I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are happy, and I'd say it was a good thing that instead of holding back either what you're putting out for consumers or manufacturers, you're putting out a better product when it's available. I'd say that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So even if you're coming from the 8 Gen 1 to this, you probably don't need to upgrade your phone or whatever device you're using that has this in it. So it's kind of the thing, right? Every year people are going to come out with it, or companies are going to come out with a new chip, new processors, new GPUs, and the year-to-year upgrades aren't usually that significant. But when you look at it on a larger scale, right? Like maybe, okay, compare this chip to what they were putting out 3 years ago. Okay, yeah, then it warrants an upgrade. Or same thing with GPUs, like, hey, the 4090s are coming out. But if you have a 3090, you probably don't need to upgrade to a 4090, right? Like maybe if you're coming from, I don't know, like 2-3 generations ago, then it makes sense. But yeah, it's an interesting thing with chips and processors and phones is they're all so good now.
Yeah.
Right? Like maybe 10 years ago, each year you would see like a 50% upgrade in performance all across the board. So from year to year, it's like, well, yeah, this is a completely different phone. This is way more capable. But now we're at the point where chips and phones and everything are just, they're upgrading so incrementally that, I mean, companies have to get you excited. They fly people, Qualcomm flew people to Hawaii for this big developer conference to get them excited. But at the end of the day, is it allowing you to do that much more than last year's? Probably not. One thing I saw that one feature they were talking about that was AI featured or AI powered was spatial audio. So now when you move your head around, the phone should be able, or the phone is capable because of this chip to sense where your head is, and it's going to adjust the audio based off of, your head position and where it would seem like the sound or the music or the video footage is coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But Apple does that already. Samsung does that already because they enable it on their own phones. I think some other phones do that too, right? So now this chip is making it available to more people, but chances are your phone might already do that. And then it's only if your phone manufacturer, whoever puts this chip in their phone, allows that to happen too, right? Another interesting thing, this chip, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, will allow you to record video in 8K footage, but the chip will. It doesn't necessarily mean that the phone manufacturer will allow that too. And it also can only output video footage in 4K footage. So it's like you can shoot in 8K, possibly, but you can only watch in 4K,
Yeah.
possibly. But it all depends on, okay, what does whoever's manufacturing the phone and decides to use this chip, what do they actually allow on their end? So like the numbers and the stats are fun to throw around, and it's fun to see like this is the point in technology that we're at right now. But am I excited for what this could unlock? Probably not. But I'm glad to see that, we are still making improvements. It's not like Apple where, their iPhone 14 has the same chip as the iPhone 13.
Good point.
At least they're saying they're putting out a new chip every year, I guess. It's a takeaway.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. That's something I completely forgot about, where the base iPhone is the same chip as the year before. Which, yeah, Qualcomm could have absolutely just cruised on the 8 Plus Gen 1 for the next 6 months or so. But I mean, it begs the question. Like, my phone came out in 2019. It's 3 going on 4 years old. I'm not gonna lie, it's not the best experience. It can be kind of buggy. It's a Xiaomi phone. Xiaomi phones have been known to be buggy. With the amount of customization that they do to Android. But there's never been a point where I felt like my phone is old or slow or,
How's Genshin Impact on it?
That's the thing. I think that's the key, right? Is like gaming is such a key point to phones right now. And I think that's where, NVIDIA is doing it using AI and machine learning and their tensor cores to do things like upscaling so that you can have games run better but still look good when you're playing at a lower resolution. And we're seeing everyone try to copy them. AMD is copying them with their FSR. Apple just launched their Metal FX upscaling, and Intel has their upscaling their features as well with their new GPUs. Could this be Qualcomm setting the stage for them using that kind of technology and potentially even convincing someone, like we've seen them potentially already convince Samsung? Maybe they can convince someone like Nintendo to say, hey, instead of going to NVIDIA or AMD, use one of our chips. You'll get way better battery life and stuff like that. Who knows if we'll see that? But yeah, maybe not focusing specifically on just the highest frequencies and the best performance. It's about how do we get our efficiency as good as possible and get things looking as good as possible on the GPU end to get more customers. Because apparently, if this rumor about Samsung is true, that's what they did to abandon AMD.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that is true, that's huge. And you brought up a good point about Nintendo. Eventually, they're going to come out with a new Switch or a new handheld console, right? Pushing the capabilities and the AI capabilities and the graphics capabilities of your phones, of your chips, if you're Snapdragon. That's going to do a lot to get someone like Nintendo on your side.
Yeah.
Someone like Steam Deck or maybe some other competitors that pop up that want to make some sort of handheld device where it's like, well, we don't want to put an AMD processor in this, and these chips are powerful and energy efficient, so why not do that?
Yeah. All right. And our third topic of the podcast is about the FTX exchange and it filing for bankruptcy and pretty much collapsing. If you try to go to ftx.com right now, there's no website. It's completely gone. The company is completely dissolved and filed for bankruptcy this past week. They apparently owe up to $3.1 billion to their top 50 creditors, as well as potentially billions to the customers who had their cryptocurrencies hosted on that exchange that is now pretty much just dissolved. The big controversy around this particular bankruptcy is that the company could have potentially used their own kind of crypto as collateral to borrow a bunch of money and then use that borrowed money in one of they have another company that they use as like a asset management company in terms of like what they invest in and stuff like that. a company called Alameda Research, which I guess kind of managed how they were kind of investing. Which, I mean, this is one thing that's going to be really interesting about this bankruptcy, because for one, this is huge, right? FTX. As much as I may not have heard a ton about it prior to this, mainly because I don't have cable, apparently they've had huge marketing deals with the likes of Naomi
Oh yeah.
Osaka, Larry David, um, uh,
Tom
Tom Brady. Thank you. I'm like, how
Brady,
did I forget the football guy's name?
Steph Curry, Orlando Bloom, Bill Clinton, Katy Perry.
Katy Perry.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like huge names to kind of get their name out there. And it kind of reminds me of what was going on with, crypto.com, getting the Staples Center and stuff like that, or even
Oh yeah, Miami Heat renamed their arena to the FTX. What FTX something?
yes, FTX Arena, I believe, or something like that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's so true, and that's something I completely forgot about. So yeah, it's one of those things of like, they went hard. They wanted to get people involved in this 100%. And the kind of sad part about this whole situation is that there's two kinds of crypto investors. There's the type of investors who, believe that it's the future of currency and it's supposed to be decentralized, right? So you get your Bitcoin or whatever crypto you're getting, and then you store it offline, essentially, not in an exchange, and you just have it that way, right? But there are also a lot of people who, like myself, don't fully understand the world of crypto, or are new to it and see these companies crop up and kind of advertise it to you as this easy. It's so easy, even Steph Curry or Tom Brady can do it, and you kind of follow their lead, and you're like, okay, let's go in and try this out, and you leave your crypto there, and then when these companies disappear, that's kind of gone too. And yeah, this could be kind of like one of the big dominoes to fall. I mean, we've talked about this many times in the past with the hacks in the past, like the Axie Infinity network that got hacked, and a bunch of money got stolen and stuff like that. Like, we've seen these little kind of cracks in the armor of these exchanges and these ideas and stuff like that not really working out. And the problem is, you're kind of beholden to whatever CEO or owner of whatever these companies decides to do with your money. And unfortunately, in this situation, it seems like a lot of people lost billions and billions of dollars. It's kind of all gone. And going back to what I was saying before, the real interesting thing is to see what happens in this bankruptcy. Do we get more information about what was going on, in terms of how these funds were so grossly mismanaged? Because you don't get $3 billion in investment unless you're kind of convincing people that something is going to change and get better, and you're going to start making more money. So it's kind of like, well, were these lies? Was this like completely mishandled and mismanaged from the beginning, or was this just some kind of big, kind of unforeseen mistake that happened that kind of just tanked the whole thing? It's going to be interesting to see if we actually get answers about that. But
yeah,
I mean, from your point of view, did you get to see much about what was going on with this FTX bankruptcy? Were you familiar with the company prior to this? And do you think that this is potentially like just blood in the water of what could potentially be happening with more kind of cryptocurrencies and specifically crypto exchanges down the line? Like, should people be more wary about holding their crypto offline going forward?
I was familiar with them because of all the celebrities, right? Because of all the big name people. I think Larry David had a Super Bowl commercial for FTX. So yeah, I was aware of FTX, and I'd heard the name. So Sam Bankman-Fried is the founder of FTX, or maybe if he's not the founder, he's the CEO. He's the person running the show, FTX. And I've heard of his name because, like you said, his Alameda company, they invested a lot. Not only was he getting a lot of money in the crypto space, but he was in turn investing in startups and in angel investing in other companies. So he's a big name in the tech space, right? Which makes sense. But then it also kind of makes sense where some of all that money went. Because I heard a story of a smallish creator. Let's say, I think they have maybe 100,000 followers or so on on YouTube. They have about 100,000 followers on YouTube. They were getting paid $50,000 a month from FTX for the stuff that they posted. which is a decent amount of money. But when you're a multi-billion dollar company, okay, that's not that much. But if you think of people like Tom Brady, like Steph Curry,
Yeah.
like Larry David, they're probably paying them more than $50,000. I would say probably in the millions of dollars. And then when you look at the Miami Heat, FTX paid the Miami Heat $135 million to rename their arena. The company also has like numerous properties that they bought in the Bahamas, either for the company or for people who worked at the company, or for Sam Bankman Fried, who was, who ran his offices out of the Bahamas. So there's a lot of money going to a lot of places. And as you mentioned, a lot of their collateral was their own tokens. So I think I read somewhere that they had at one point about $16 billion in customers' money, in people's money. And I guess typically the way that banks work, let's say, is that, or how they're supposed to work. We could get into another rabbit hole about that. But if I put $100 in the bank, they have, let's say $100 worth of gold to say, hey, we are backing your money based off of this tangible thing that we have. There's some sort of collateral that the institution has to say that you give us $100, we have $100 worth of this. The only problem is that when customers gave them $16 billion worth of cryptocurrency in order to put up collateral, they had $16 billion worth of their own tokens that they made up. So whether it be FTX, whether it be FTT, their token, or their other token, SRM, it wasn't backed by anything tangible. So they took these people's money, or this is part of the reason where all the money went. They took these people's money and they said, oh yeah, don't worry, we got the assets to back it up. We'll give you FTT, we'll give you SRM, which essentially is worthless because they made it up themselves. It's not like, they had $16 billion worth of gold and said, we are going to use this gold to back these tokens that we've created. They just made them up. And so they took these people's money and then they paid it to influencers and they paid it to celebrities and they bought properties and they bought fancy cars. And then at some point, someone came and said, I actually need like some of my millions of dollars worth of cryptocurrency back. And then people started to realize that, wait, these guys don't actually have any of the money they're supposed to have. And kind of what happens is if a bank, let's say, doesn't have enough money and everyone decides to withdraw all of their money from the bank, the government will step in and say, well, no, okay, this is a government regulated institution. You are tight for cash right now, whatever, JP Morgan or whoever it is, we are going to lend you the money so that you can give everyone the money that they're trying to withdraw from the bank. But in the case of this cryptocurrency exchange or just cryptocurrencies in general, they are not a government regulated organization or institution. So when people say, hey, we want our $16 billion back, and FTX says, hey, we don't have your $16 billion, you want some tokens we made up, the government isn't going to step in, or at this moment, they're not going to step in. Maybe they will in the future, probably not. But no one's stepping in to say, listen, you don't have the money you're supposed to have. We're going to step in and provide the money for you so that this institution doesn't, crash or go bankrupt. So that's kind of what's been going on with FTX, which is very unfortunate. And yeah, we're kind of seeing the downfall of crypto, I guess. I mean, as you mentioned, Axie Infinity. I remember when we first started talking about Axie Infinity, and I was like, oh yeah, this little cutesy game, a couple thousand people play it, and how meteoric their rise was.
Yeah.
Right. And how meteoric the rise of Ether and Bitcoin and Dogecoin and all these other coins popped up. And then now all of a sudden they're tanking, right? I saw the other day that there was some Bored Ape that Justin Bieber bought for like 1.3 million. And right now it's worth 74,000.
Jeez.
So, whether it's cryptocurrencies, whether it's NFTs, the bubble has definitely burst. I know at one point we were saying, well, how long is this going to last? The bubble has definitely burst. I deep down believe that cryptocurrencies are the future. I believe that blockchain is the future. Maybe not to the point where, you have NFTs selling for billion or millions of dollars. I don't know if I believe in it to that extent, but I think at its base, I think blockchain is the future of technology, or is one of the futures of technology. So I inherently believe in Ether, but now when it comes to the exchanges and where you're storing your money, I can't give any advice on that.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about, I don't know enough about cryptocurrency to that extent, but I will say that for Sam Bankman-Fried, the writing was on the wall for him. He was seen as this wonderkind. When he gave talks, he wasn't essentially a straightforward shooter. He didn't explain things the best of ways. He swore a lot, but he's seen as, oh yeah, he's this young, brilliant mind. People said he's obviously a genius. He's a future trillionaire, and it's maybe a little bit biased, but I would say people spoke about him the way that they spoke, or they still speak about Elon Musk. And there were some people that said, hey, this Sam Bankman-Fried guy isn't all that he's cracked up to be. But, people bought into the hype of FTX and all the money he was throwing around. And, people kind of turned a blind eye. I mean, hey, if he wanted to pay me $50,000 a month to promote his exchange, I'd probably do it too. I want to do too much research. But if you are going to store your money on an exchange, or you are going to, choose to invest in a company, whether it's Alameda or someone else, you have to believe in the person running the show. And it can't be just, they're so charismatic and, I love what they tweet about, or, he plays League of Legends just like me, which is another thing Sam Bankman-Fried does. He giving interviews playing League of Legends, and so, oh wow, he's such a genius. Like, well, no, he's just a bad businessman.
Yeah.
So I would say, and this is, I don't know, just a general statement, don't get caught up in the hype of people, of CEOs, and make sure that they have sound practices. And it's not just, oh yeah, this guy, he's not like anyone else, that's why we should believe in him. He's shucking the norms of what it means to be a CEO. Well, maybe the norms are the norms for a reason, because it routinely leads to success.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. I'm not worried about this being the norm for exchanges, because Sam Bankman-Fried isn't the norm for someone who runs a crypto exchange. I'd say don't expect meteoric rises in prices for cryptos like there were in the past. Don't expect that to happen again, or happen as quickly. But I don't think this is going to happen to other exchanges. I hope not. Yeah,
that's definitely the hope. And to your point, there's a quote here from the CBC where the courts implemented a new CEO to oversee the liquidation of assets during the bankruptcy process, by the name of John J. Ray. And this is a quote from him. He says, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here." And just in context, John J. Ray has been working in this field for 40 years and has overseen the liquidation of Enron, one of the most high-profile bankruptcy cases in history. And he's even shocked by how horrible this company's books are. So yeah, to your point, hopefully this is just an aberration as opposed to like the norm, because it's just been handled by really, really incompetent people.
Yeah.
Really
sketchy people.
Yeah.
Maybe they knew exactly. They
True.
were very competent in what they were doing. They were just very untrustworthy individuals.
That's a very good point, because I'm pretty sure there's, well, I shouldn't say I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a few $1 billion somewhere that no one can touch, that, maybe some people got their hands on prior to this whole bankruptcy happening. And yeah, I think that's the sad part at the end of the day. It's like a lot of people got taken advantage of with the promise of being able to, make a lot of money really quickly. And unfortunately, the result of that is that the entire company has folded. But like you said, hopefully this is just an aberration and not the norm of the market overall. And our final topic of the podcast is about a brand new phone, or potential phone. It's a bit of a rumor, but the rumor is that Google is working on a Pixel phone that folds, the Pixel Fold. And we got some renderings of what it might look like based on leaks. And it seems like a pretty cool idea. It looks a little bit more small and compact compared to what the Galaxy Fold is. And to that end, it's kind of like, if anyone's seen the Galaxy Fold, it's this foldable phone that's really long and skinny when it's closed, and when you open it up, you get almost like a square screen that's much larger, almost like a small tablet. Now this device seems like it's a smaller overall and less of like a tall narrow screen, but just like more like a regular sized, maybe small phone. And then when you open it up, you get a larger screen, kind of like the Galaxy Fold, but it's just much smaller overall. And it seems to be, if these rumors are true, Google may be looking at making a foldable phone that's more compact and portable, and also quite a bit thinner than what we might have seen from a Galaxy Fold. But it still has a lot of the characteristics of a Pixel device, especially the current Pixel devices, with the camera bar on the back of it, and the camera cutouts in the metal that we've seen on the Pixel 7 line of devices. But yeah, other than that, we don't know much. We know there are some rumors of potential prices and stuff like that, but really nothing is confirmed. I guess really the interesting question, I think, overall is it a good thing that Google may be interested in making a folding phone? Is it something that we want to see from Google? Is this just something that they're working on in the background to and never really planning on releasing, just because they know that more companies are going to be coming out with folding phones and they want the future of Android, to be prepared, almost like how Nexus devices were in the past? They were like development devices. Could this just be a development device for Google? But yeah, I'm curious to get your opinion. Do you want to see a folding device from Google? Obviously, if it does release, it's going to buck the trend of affordable Pixel devices, because we know foldable phones are going to be really expensive. But yeah, is that something that interests you at all?
It definitely does. And I think simply because, as you said, it's going to be more of like a reference device.
Mm-hmm.
Samsung has had 3 generations of foldables. Companies like Xiaomi, Huawei, they've put out foldables too. So I think we can all see that yes, foldables are becoming a thing. And I think once Google gets into the space of foldables, if these leaks and renders are believed to be true, I think once they get into the market of foldables, the software on Android will be a lot cleaner. Because right now it's tailored for just a regular candy bar phone. And yes, there is a foldable offshoot to it, but I feel like a lot of the tweaking and all that is left to the companies, left to the manufacturers, to the Samsungs, to the Huawei's, to the Xiaomi's, to tweak Android themselves to make it usable for the foldable phones. And so I think that once Google decides to make a foldable for themselves, and they care a lot more about how Android runs on foldables, I think we'll see a cleaner experience for the companies that do already make foldables. And I think we'll see more companies be okay making foldables, which is only going to lead to better devices for us. And, we see things like the pixel only features, like the magic eraser, like the auto dictation, like the auto unblur, which originally were pixel only features, but then they come to the other Android phones like Samsung.
Yeah.
So I think Google focusing on a foldable phone, or not just focusing and abandoning the other stuff, but them having a foldable phone that they make, I think is going to create foldable features that, one, either Google only had the ability to create in the first place, or maybe they're the only ones who thought of creating this. And then it's going to be a pixel foldable only feature for maybe a year, and then it's going to trickle down to the Samsungs, to the Huawei's, to the Xiaomi's, right? So I think it's a great idea. Now, am I going to buy it? Probably not. So, the price that is floating around right now is, I've seen $17.99. I don't know what you've seen, but I mean, in the space of the foldables, it's not an outrageous price, but it's also not, a Pixel 6a price or a 7a price, right? So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this phone and to seeing what Google does with the foldable and what this allows other competitors to do with the foldable. But I'm not going to be the one to buy the phone, but I'm interested to see what it looks like. Now, I'm not sure if we've gotten our leaks or our stuff from the same source, but John Prosser, who's a very notable leaker, is the one that I saw this from first. Now, he leaked the Pixel Watch like a year and a half before it came out in terms of like renders, and it looks exactly like he leaked. He leaked the Pixel 6a before it came out, and now he's leaked this. He has renders, he has press images, he's even had some like render videos, and according to him, it's going to come out in May of 2023, so next year, alongside the Pixel tablet, which I think a lot of people are more excited about than they originally were, and it's supposed to cost $17.99. So I guess my question back to you: are you excited for this Pixel foldable phone? Not saying that you're gonna buy it, probably not gonna buy it, but are you excited for this Pixel foldable and what it means for the future of foldables on Android at least? And do you think that it is going to come out that early? Do you think it is something that could come out in May of 2023?
Well, I guess my answer to both those questions is no, not really. And to go back to what you're talking about with the source, yeah, I believe that all this information did originate with John Prosser, and a lot of where I've seen it, or people just reporting on what he's mentioned, and like you've mentioned, has a great track record, specifically with Pixel devices and iPhones in the past. Just phones in general. Definitely has some connections with these leaks. But with that second question you asked, was specifically with the date, we have seen dates kind of shuffle around based on, even what he's reported in the past, not really coming to being true, or even being delayed from those original dates. I think we saw that with the Pixel, was it 5A, and 6, where, we got some dates from Front Page Tech and John Prosser in the past, and, those just kind of falling away until we were like, well, when are we actually going to get these devices? We know they're coming, and they came really late. The reason why I don't think this might be coming with the tablet is I think that would be kind of weird, because they have such different design aesthetics, and I could more picture this coming with something like a 7a or a Pixel 8 than the tablet, because the tablet looks nothing like anything else in the Pixel product line. It looks much more like a Nest device. And, I wouldn't put it past Google to have two completely unrelated looking products being announced at the same time. They're not necessarily the best with announcing products, but to me, that just makes it seem like they wouldn't have them in the same event. But that's just based off of like that information. I don't really know. In terms of, am I excited for it? No. I've never really been super excited about foldables in general. And when it comes to foldables, there's been two that I've been a little bit more positive on. One of them is the clamshell foldable devices, like the Razer phone or the Galaxy Flip devices. I think those are cooler just because they're so much more compact. And if you want to get productivity done with a bigger screen, said it many times on this podcast, I think the Microsoft Duo is great. It's form factor wise one of the best out there, in my opinion. Much better than the kind of design of what we saw with the Samsung Galaxy Fold, simply because still to this day those phones have durability issues. And to ask someone to spend $1,900 American on a phone and have it be such a delicate device is just not practical, in my opinion. I don't think the technology is there for it to be an actual interesting, cool, mainstream device. Whereas I do think that technology is there for something like the Microsoft Duo. The problem with the Microsoft Duo is the software. And if this device, if it's just like a reference device and Google's working on this kind of stuff behind the scenes, if this means we can get more devices like the Duo, which I don't think we ever will, but if it does mean we can get more devices like it with really, really good software, I would be much more on board with that than waiting for an actual foldable phone that has a screen that isn't going to break a year and a half down the road. So yeah, I'm not super excited about this. Maybe that could change if we do get some big breakthroughs in like a glass tech that can be really foldable, or even plastic screens that can be really durable and foldable at the same time. But we're not there yet. And like I said many times, I think the Microsoft Duo is such a fantastic device. I just wish it was a little bit more successful, so we could see more companies kind of take that design and emulate that design as opposed to the Samsung design.
what if Google's device is the Duo, and it's not exactly like this render. It doesn't have the camera bar in the back. It's just a screen on the inside, or I guess two screens on the inside with a fold and a screen that doesn't break after a year.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely be really excited for that. Like I said, I think those devices would be great. I also think that, I understand why Microsoft can't continue to make those devices. It's just not profitable for them. No one's buying them. But I would personally, even more than that, would love to see a device like that running Windows as opposed to Android. I think it's just much more of an interesting idea and much more productive. And I think Android gets in the way of what that device could be in a lot of ways. But like you said, if this means that Google's taking this stuff really seriously, and not just for a device like the Duo, for any kind of foldable, if Google really starts to take this seriously and bake this stuff into Android, I think that just makes all foldables, better in general. And then also, I wouldn't mind seeing Google take the crack at the flip form factor as well. At the end of the day, Samsung needs competition in North America. They have a lot of competition in Europe and China, where companies like Xiaomi and Realme and all these other companies are doing phones, including foldables, and Oppo. We really don't have that in North America. And if Google is going to be like, you know what, okay, fine, we'll kind of push forward foldables, as much as they might not appeal to me, I'm sure for people who really do care about foldables, it's a good thing to see someone else try it, and potentially even make the whole product line better in the long
run. Any closing statements for today?
No. It's a fun podcast episode. Just hope we get to see more kind of Duo-like devices in the future. Maybe, hopefully, Microsoft brings back the Neo. They're kind of larger version of the Duo that ran Windows. Maybe we'll see that in the future, but who knows? Probably not.
Yeah, probably not. Take it easy, everyone in podcast land.
Catch you in the next episode.